Hello, and welcome to WISE 24 Montreal, presented by the Scotiabank Women Initiative in collaboration with Scotiabank, Roynat Capital, and Jarislowsky Fraser. Thank you for joining us today. As part of WISE 24, a global showcase of women entrepreneurs in tech initiated by Women Startup Labs in Silicon Valley, the Scotiabank Women Initiative is thrilled to showcase some of our top women startups in tech to investors, other startups, and ecosystem players worldwide. My name is Anna Marinescu, and I am the manager for the Scotiabank Women Initiative for Quebec. The Scotiabank Women Initiative is a comprehensive program to help advance women-owned and women-led businesses across Canada through three key pillars: access to capital, mentorship, and education. And we must say that we are thrilled that today's event links all three pillars. So since launching in December 2018, the Scotiabank Women Initiative has achieved several notable milestones. In September 2019, the bank committed to deploy $3 billion in capital to women-led businesses in its first 3 years. The program has engaged more than 1,500 women through events and group mentorship sessions across Canada. We formed the Scotiabank Women Initiative Advisory Board of Scotiabank executives, such as Maria Mangiacavallo here today, who provide expertise to help women grow their business through facilitated small group mentorship sessions. We also developed an online knowledge center for self-directed learning. For more information, you can visit the Scotiabank Women Initiative's website at scotiabankwomeninitiative.com. I am also the proud Canadian chapter leader for WISE 24. So having organized the very first edition of WISE 24 in fall of 2019, prior to joining Scotiabank, I could not be happier to see this project evolve in this new, and I must say improved iteration, thanks to the incredible support from a wonderful team. This year, this global event is themed Rise Locally, Empower Globally. As you know, it features pitches from early-stage women-led ventures in 13 cities across the world, including San Francisco, New York, Taipei, Tokyo, Seoul, Sao Paulo, Ukraine, and Montreal, which is the only Canadian city to participate. WISE 24 invites technology and innovation leaders, both domestic and international, to look beyond borders for new markets, talent, and investment opportunities. In addition to financial tech, biotech, consumer tech, and social impact businesses, this year's global event will feature startups working on innovative solutions to the ongoing COVID pandemic. To kick off the event, we have put together an extremely well-rounded panel to discuss the importance of connecting and making an impact on a global scale by investing in women and innovation. At 1 p.m., we will be live streaming the pitch portion of the event, broadcasted on a global platform where I have heard that now over 1,500 attendees are logging in currently. Allow me to introduce my colleague, Mélissa-France Heredia, who has accepted to moderate this panel. So Melissa has been working on the commercial lending space for over 10 years, specializing in customizing of financing solutions for her clients. She currently leads the Greater Montreal office and is regional lead for technology and innovation banking at Roynat Capital. She sits on the board of the Turnaround Management Association and M&A Club, as well as co-chairs the fundraising committee of Share the Warmth, a Montreal Southwest food bank and community organization. Thank you for joining us today once more. And Melissa, I will let you further introduce our speakers and facilitate the important discussion ahead.
Thanks, Anna. I'm very excited to host this panel of successful and leading women today with you. I'd like to begin by sharing a few stats. According to the Government of Canada, only 16% of Canadian SMEs are owned by women. Yet studies show that advancing gender equality and women's participation in the economy, Canada could increase its GDP by up to $150 billion. A Fortune magazine study reveals that companies with women executives tend to perform better than those led by men. And a new study furthers that claim, finding that women CEOs drive 3 times the returns that S&P 500 enterprise run predominantly by men. During this panel, we will discuss the importance of investing in women, of being impactful as a founder, as well as connecting on a global scale. We will also explore the topics of entrepreneurial mindset and key trends. So without further ado, let's meet our panel. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Elaine Kunda. Elaine is founder and managing partner of Disruption Ventures. A serial entrepreneur herself for over 15 years, she recently launched Disruption Ventures, a VC fund that invests in female-founded and managed companies. This was a natural progression for Elaine, as she has spent the past 6 years consulting and advising startups and early-stage companies, helping them reach their goals and access to financing. Prior to consulting, she was CEO of B5 Media and Zip Local. Elaine, to set the tone, I'd like you to tell us why you chose to invest in women founders versus women and men founders.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I'm excited to be part of this. I think it was 2012 when I exited B5 Media. I started to realize that I was being introduced to female founders by other VCs, and they would ask me to give feedback on these women. And I would meet them, and they were incredibly capable, well-educated, had great domain experience, checked every box that the VCs tend to look for investing capital, and not one of them got funding. And I realized that in some cases, they were ahead of the market. They had huge opportunity for scale. They had already shown significant growth, and yet they couldn't raise any institutional funding. And so I thought, hey, and this was before there was any research or any focus on the fact that this was a reality. And I thought, wow, obviously women can't raise money. Obviously these women are very successful. Obviously, that is a really interesting market opportunity. And so it was at that point that I had the idea to start a fund. The timing wasn't right. There was no research in the market to support what I intuitively believed to be true. And there really wasn't a focus from LPs to invest in a fund like that. So I shelved it, and it was in around 2018 when I realized that the awareness was now there, that the research supported what I intuitively believed to be true, and that, but nothing had been changed. And if you look at the stats of VC funding, we've gone from 2% of women-founded companies raise VC dollars in 2018 to, 2017, 2018 it was 2.2%, and 2019 it was only 2.7%. So we still have a huge way to go, but I'm happy to be on the right side of history and investing in women.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. I think we'll come back to that topic of financing women. And next up, I'd like to introduce Andrée-Lise Méthot. Andrée-Lise is a founder and managing partner of Cycle Capital, Canada's largest clean tech venture fund with $500 million under management. She's founded and co-founded numerous clean tech associations and accelerators, and was named an officer of l'Ordre National du Québec for her contribution to the clean tech ecosystem. She's one of the few female founders and managing partners in Canada. And Cycle is led by a management team where there's gender parity. Andrée-Lise, can you tell us why gender parity in a management team is important to you?
I think at the end, diversity is very important. But gender parity, our experience at Cycle, we have at top level, we have 6 partners, 3 women, 3 men, different ages, different story from different country. And I will say our job is so difficult. Just give you a perspective. We can receive over 1,000 deals a year, and we will pick 2. your level of mistakes can be so high. If you have more information, more data, women perspective, a generation perspective, you don't have the same eyes if you were born in India or if you were born in US. And to have that around the table just give you the chance to have a better results for your investors first. But the gender parity changed a bit the way to our teams can see the deal flow. If you look at the deal flow in general, we have less than 10% of women founder, women CEOs, CTOs, CFOs, and others. But to have a women around the table, they have people who are ready to listen more, their way to telling things in terms of VC. I will never say we are so different between men and women, but the fact we have a sort of, I would say, a BA or not the right perception of the gender, the color, the age can change our perception. And I'm sure it's a real value have to have a gender parity and to have diversity around the table, specifically in clean tech, because clean tech and impact investor, it's not just about money, it's about environmental impact, social impact, and have the 360 views around the table. It's so rich for an investor.
Thanks, Andrée-Lise. So the importance of diversity makes for richer results, I think, is the sort of summary. And finally, I'd like to introduce our third panelist, Cindi-Eve Bourassa. She is Director of the Free Trade Agreement Promotion Division of Global Affairs Canada, which conducts outreach events and training workshops to raise awareness and help mobilize Canadian SMEs to diversify their overseas trade. Cindi-Eve is also responsible for trade missions, ministerial outreach, and inclusive trade to help open doors and opportunities for women, Indigenous, LGBTQ2+, youth, and other visible minorities to successfully expand in global markets. Cindi-Eve was Canada's first female trade commissioner to Saudi Arabia as well. Cindi-Eve, why is it important to open international doors for women, Indigenous, LGBTQ2+, and other visible minorities?
Thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. It's nice to see how we can easily adapt and are able to connect from all the part of the world. So really a pleasure. Obviously, for us at the Government of Canada and at the Trade Commissioner Service, we help exporters. It's about making sure that trade benefits everyone. And like Andrée-Lise and Elaine mentioned, there are key evidence that sometimes underrepresented exporters have a certain bias in, for example, accessing financing, or have more difficulty in getting certain meetings, or ensuring that there is the right approach. And for us at the Government of Canada, we've done, as you know, it's now we now have a feminist government. Even within the public service, when I came back from Saudi Arabia at the management table, it was about 75% male, 25% women. And right now at the management table, we have a parity. We have 50-50 in terms of executive. And this is the importance of making sure that you have the representation from a government perspective and human resources perspective. But it's also very important in the inclusive trade approach that we ensure that all the groups benefits and that they all understand what are the key opportunities for them. So for me, at the Trade Commissioner Service, what we've been doing over the last 20 years as it relates to businesswomen in international trade is ensuring that women understand that there is that enhanced service that the trade commissioners can give them to help them export abroad. And it's also the importance of saying, what is your products? Where is the best fit? Where should you be going into which markets? Because every person is is different, and every entrepreneur has their own challenges. Plus, they have their own products or their own services. And our role is really to be the matchmaker and to make sure that the person has the best match, because we want to make sure that they are a successful entrepreneur. And in the last few years, we've really try to do a focus on what we call underrepresented exporters. I personally prefer more the inclusive trade promotion approach, because we want to ensure that there are more women who trade. We want to make sure that there are more LGBTQ2 plus who exports abroad, as well as Indigenous exporters and visible minority and new immigrant. And we have put together a series of programs for them, dedicated trade missions abroad. We've had some recently to the US before the COVID area. We also had a trade missions dedicated with women in France and Belgium to make sure that the opportunities are there, are brought to them, and it gives them that direct access of seeing where they can make a difference.
Yeah, thanks, Cindi-Eve. So, I think important to facilitate, I guess, the dialogue for these entrepreneurs. So, Andrée-Lise, I want to ask you a question, I think, on impact. So, 2020 was a big year for a lot of reasons, some of which we may want to forget, but others I think we'll want to remember. One of them is the fact that, according to the Global Impact Investing Network, impact investing globally has doubled in recent year and reached about $500 billion US. So, Andrée-Lise, can you tell us more about how social and environmental aspects of the business impacts your valuation and analysis of a business when you're looking to make an investment?
Certainly. Thank you very much for asking. There is currently a big appetite for consumers and big companies for extra financial impact, including social and environmental benefits. And I think the COVID crisis just accelerate that, especially for the climate change. And if I may, if COVID-19 is a black swan, I can say without any doubt, the climate change will be the super big rhino. It will be strong. It will be a disaster. And I think the financial world understand that very well. Basically, what you can see actually with major big institutions like World Bank, International Monetary Fund, they ask for a green pathway for investment, supporting infrastructure, technology, and others. And you can see, and I had a chance to follow their position, super big group like BlackRock, who during the crisis said, okay, it's a COVID-19 situation, but the next one will be climate change. And BlackRock, as a super big investor in the ecosystem, needs to be clear in terms of commitment and environmental orientation, social orientation, including diversity and inclusion. I think the world changed a lot. The presence of women, the crisis around the situation with George Floyd, based in US, changed in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, totally our perspective about our, we'll say, democratic world. And I think the investors are so sophisticated. They understand very well what will be the impact in terms of consumption. Big corporation, they know they need to provide the right product with the right branding, with the right label. And today's social and environmental, it's part of the game. And it's source of revenues for many companies now in the world. And I think we have a lot of room for that. We can improve many things. And it's an incredible place for women to play their game and be successful in this new window in our financial world.
Yeah, so if I hear you correctly, I mean, what you're saying basically is that it's not even like an aspect. It's a fundamental sort of being social, and environment is just now fundamental. So if you're looking for an investor, you just have to be those things. Otherwise, the investor won't look at you.
And I think it's clear, but we'll have a lot of challenge, how we will apply norms, the rules, how we will evaluate the real results, how we can support many questions. But it's the beginning of the wave. I will see in 10 years. But I can say without any doubt, climate change will change totally our perspective on it. And it's real and it's happening.
Yeah. Elaine, is there anything you'd like to add as how you see this evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
Sure. So I read a book a few years ago called Good is the New Great. And I realized that we were at the start of a movement. The intersection of social media as a platform for change and giving people a voice, the reality of Generation X or Z and millennials, and their view on the world as far as social impact, and giving them this voice and framework. I had suggested to large organizations that within a moment, your business can be dissolved if you are not socially responsible in the future. And so I believe that to be true. We saw with Floyd what happened, George Floyd, what happened, how immediately there was a movement. And I think what people are saying is we're ripe for change. How I believe investing, I think we have a responsibility to look at the impact of the investments we're making. I'm intuitively and naturally care about impact. So though I'm not an impact fund, I do believe that I have no interest in a company that doesn't have some sort of ESG component to it. And, just the fact that I invest in women, is a really great starting point. But I think we're at a time, I think we're at a cross section. I think the world is speaking to us and saying, you can't ignore, and look, there's an older generation maybe who just didn't get and don't understand the power of the tools that we have available to us for voice. There's no longer a hierarchy in society the same way that there used to be. And I attribute social media to that. What we do with it is now up to us. And I always say, put your money where your mouth is. So invest in the things that create change, because we all vote with our wallet, whether you're an investor, a consumer, an organization. And I think, organizations who don't intuitively feel that way need to at least recognize that they are in danger if they don't. And their motivation should be their success.
Yeah, thanks. Cindi-Eve, from a foreign investment perspective, is social and sort of environmental impact something that investors look for or discuss, or is at the forefront of their discussions?
Well, I think, nowadays it has to be integrated into everything that we do. And I mean, Canada wanting to be a leader in environment and wanting to have a voice at the G7, for example, is something of definite real importance. But if I can just add to what Andrée-Lise and Elaine were saying, is I find for us what's happening right now, and just before I was on a call with our management at Global Affairs, and it's we really need to take advantage of what's currently happening, and there's a desire for change, and there is a momentum, and I kind of feel that at the 5 years ago, it was about women and making sure there's no more male and ensuring that there's that female representation. Well, now I think what's happening right now with the diversity file is the same push that we have. And for me, as a leader and as a woman and as a mom of 2 young daughters, I think it's the importance of making sure that every day we show the importance of diversity, that on my team there is a wide range of ages and of people of all backgrounds, because like Andrée-Lise said, the more diverse we are, the better results we get, and people get that real important perspective. And from an underrepresented exporter perspective, one of the things I want to change, and I would be interested to hear from the views of anyone on the panel who can send me an email or DM me on Twitter, is what we have to do right now is it's not going to be a sprint. It's going to be a very long marathon of change in culture and how we deliver who we are and how we move forward. And one of the things that I want to make sure we do is that we don't jump into solution, that we really understand what is the real problems right now that we're facing, so that we have solution that can really make an impact, and that in 10 and 15 years, if we have a strategic approach, we will have reached our goals. So at the moment, I think it is like we need to take advantage of the momentum, but we also need to have a strategic approach and making sure that we have a deep understanding of what's like, because for example, and like a Black entrepreneur doesn't have the same challenges as an Indigenous entrepreneur. They might have very different views, and their perceptions is what's unique to them and who they are as a person. And for us, for the government, it's the importance of making sure where we can make a difference, understanding to create programs that meet the needs, and this way we can really ensure that we're successful.
Yeah. So if we all agree that like diversity is key, and it brings value, it creates value, then why have women and sort of visible minorities been so notoriously ill-funded by VC? Like, I think I'm asking sort of Andrée-Lise and Elaine, like, if you have, like, why is that?
Well, when people look for pattern recognition, generally speaking, and so there's a whole lot of psychology behind how we make decisions, what we're comfortable with. We actually feel more comfortable with people who look, act, think like we do. And in order to have momentum and change, you need friction. And not everybody is comfortable with friction, and friction comes from different viewpoints. When you look at the number of people of color who have any decision-making power or authority, or women who have any decision-making power or authority in the venture capital community, you're under 10%. I want to be careful as well that we all, as an industry, well, I hope that people are careful not to jump on bandwagons. As Cindy just mentioned, I see a lot of it happening. One of my founders tweeted recently, I thought I was a bad fundraiser until I realized that I'm not bad. I'm really quite good at it. I just had to find the right investors. And she said, I do not have a single white man who's an investor. And she tweeted myself and the other investors that are in her fund. She's not only a woman, but she's a woman of color. And she put me in this Twitter chain with Silicon Valley investors. And, so naively, I texted her and I said, I didn't even realize that two out of three of my investments are women of color. And she said, I have to laugh at you because the fact that you didn't realize that is quite humorous. But, that is so rare. And I don't know why, particularly I don't have this lens where color or gender matter. But what we typically see in investing and in decision-making, hiring practices, people hire someone that when they sit across the table, they have some kind of commonality with, and that often comes from the school you went to, the background that you were raised, and the color of your skin or your gender. And unfortunately, that's a fact. And people don't change, but you have to put processes in place. You have to put dynamics in place to make that change, because they're not going to change on their own.
Yeah. Andrée-Lise, do you have thoughts to share? I'm sure you do.
But I totally agree with Elaine said. I think it's real. And when you are a fundraiser like us in the real market, you can evaluate the real challenge for women to do this job. As you know, you have less than 1% female founder and managing partner in the world. The firm, it's less than 1%. It's nothing. And just remember me when I start my school. I was fan of science, and I started physics and engineering. And in the class, I was only less than 1% in general with my colleagues. The real thing is, I think people managing risk with the skills and the culture they have. And when you don't understand, and when it's not like you put that on the risk column. And I think it's not helping women. I think what we need to do is demystify the risk. How you can transform diversity, things different than you can expect. Not in a risk, not a real risk, but a potential value. And it's all about opening. It's about culture. It's about, we say in French, le siècle des Lumières. It's a light century way to have a conversation with the world. And I think if we can push this idea, it will be easier to bring more women, more Black people around the VC world. Because if it's tough for women, it's really tough for Black people, indigenous, including other groups in our world. But our responsibility, I will say, I just turned 53, managing $500 million, founder, managing partner, balance partners group, gender parity balance partner groups in my firm. I have a lot of women in my portfolio. And what I can say, I have a responsibility. It's very important when I'm thinking about succession and when I'm speaking with my co-managing partner, who's a man, very open, Claude Vachet. We need to have this conversation and put our perception of the risk in another box when it's time to discuss about diversity of place of women around the table. I think the other thing, the reality, when I start my first fund, I will say 12 years ago, started the fundraising, and I don't want to share with you pain details I went through.
But at this time, I can concur with all of that, probably.
Yeah, but I don't want to do that. But it was real old school boys way to do fundraising. But what I'm seeing now, when we raise Fund 4, I can see young boy school on my side. And I think it's helping too. It's not just about women. It's about how we raise our kids, how we raise our sons. And it's a real cultural change. And in my perspective, we, as a women with power, with different places in our life, in our community, we need to bring with us other women in this important power role. And VCs and science, it's the hard one. It's really tough. It's big boys club. And our place, it's to be part of that and be successful with them. And I think it's important to work with this approach in the ecosystem.
So Andrée-Lise, on like demystifying the risk and looking for value, I guess, with women founders, like what are some of the distinctive attributes that you see in women that make them good entrepreneurs?
But I don't have a list of, it's not the fairy tale things. I saw different women. Some of them are really good. Some of them are bad. It's not specific attribute. The problem, it's not on this side of the table, in my point of view. It's the other side of the table. It's the perception. And I will never say women are so different, because we cannot say, I don't want to speak for all women. I am a woman with my reality, francophone, born in Quebec, in North America, went through a public school. My story, it's one story. But you can go in Atlanta and you will have a conversation with another successful woman and she will have another story. But I don't think we have a specific attribute. What I can say, you can pull together men, women, different source of diversity around the table with the same value. And our role and the role of our men colleagues, it's promote these values in the ecosystem.
If I can just comment, because Andrée-Lise, I love your statement about demystifying the risk, and I think that's the important piece here. There's an unconscious bias on the investor side that women just aren't as good at allocating capital or running a business. And when you have that unconscious bias, no matter what that person in front of you says, does, presents to you, you just can't see it the same way you would if a man presented the same content. And the proof point in that is when they do blind studies where a woman presents her business plan the same way, and the man presents the exact same business plan, the man is 2 times as likely to get investor positive response. So it's not about...
We totally agree. The problem, it's the other side of the table. It's not on the women's side of the table.
There's a chain of command and challenge that exists, because if Andrée-Lise can't raise money, which she's now been very successful, but if she hadn't had the tenacity to get through that first fund, which is an enormous challenge, if I am not successful in raising funds, then we can't deploy capital with the open-minded lens that we have. And so this isn't just the founders, this is the asset managers, asset allocators, investors, where we have to take a look at if you don't put money and power into the hands of women who have this open-mindedness, we're never going to change the dynamic. And I think, and that's, Scotiabank is the lead investor in my fund and has been a huge supporter in their women's initiative in actually allocating capital, which has been game-changing for me.
Yeah, and I think there are stats on there, like if you have on this, and I've read some, like if you have a woman founder, the likelihood that there'll be women executive on her board, on her team, sort of like, quadruples. So I think, like women have to pave the way for other women. Cindi-Eve, as we're talking about unconscious bias, like how do you see that women founders or sort of diversity founders are perceived in different parts of the world and like business settings? Like, are there more obstacles? Or I'm guessing yes. Sort of the answer I think to that is yes. But like what are these obstacles and how can they be overcome?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think. In Canada, we have a good model, right? Especially with the fact that we have support with childcare, for example, which is one of the big things. If you go in developing countries, if you have a woman entrepreneur, she might have a great products, a good strategy, but she doesn't have the winning condition at home. So having the winning condition at home, either it's like for us in Canada, we're lucky because we have a good sports system, or like, for example, like I have young kids and, the daycare system works well. And there's a good after school program at the girls' schools. And we're lucky to have maternity leave, etc. But then I look at my colleagues into the U.S. State Department and they have 4 weeks off of their own vacation when they have children. So that is very important. I think making sure that we give the right conditions for entrepreneur, that it is in Canada or if it's in a developing country, or if it's in places in the Middle East where I've been posted, it's making sure that we give the right help. And it starts from what we said with giving funding and making sure that there is no bias there. But it also is very important from a policy development perspective. And for us now at the Government of Canada, we have a mandatory, what we call gender-based analysis. So what does that mean? That means that any documents that goes for approval or like any new programs, any new policy decision needs to be looked at from a gender-based analysis perspective. And it's something that is fairly new in terms of like it is now mandatory in any new decisions or any new funding. But before it was something like kind of like a bit of a tick in a box. You know, it's been done. Yeah, is there a real difference on a women chapters for Canada Chile free trade agreement, for example? How does it really benefits the community? And the entire idea is that if a woman entrepreneur in Chile has a small company, and if this company employs a group of women, and if there are other women who contribute to it, then she can create growth and she can create jobs into her own community, and that brings a better quality value to everyone. So it's really key to be able to ensure that on a day-to-day basis we are conscious that there is a need to include women in all aspects. And I think for me as a manager within the Government of Canada, it's the importance of if you can see it, you can be it. And the importance of making sure that we have a pipeline, that we give chances to younger women on our team, and that we have the discussions with the women on our team that is it the right time for you? Like, do you want to spend more time with your kids? Or some people would say, no, I want to have the chance, even if I have kids. And when they're sleeping at 7:30, I'll go back on and I'll do that work. And we need to give that flexibility as a manager, because if we want to have women in important position, and if we want to make sure that women are part of like as an equal base, and you know, they cannot be discriminated. My assistant deputy minister is she's a cheerleaders for women and for young moms, and one of the things that I found was fascinating the first time that I went on a meeting with her when she joined Global Affairs Canada is we were briefing Minister Champagne at the time, François-Philippe Champagne, and it was kind of those meetings that are scheduled for 4:30, but they start at 5, and then school pickup ends at 6. And she started the meeting by saying, "Minister, we, so happy to be here, so happy to brief you, but in 45 minutes I have to go because I have to pick up my kids and my husband is away." And I thought that was so human. And and the minister was like, "Of course, no problem. I totally understand." So it's being not afraid of having those discussions and being honest. And it's if we talk about it, and if we say that we have those challenges and we need help, then it kind of makes the whole concept less taboo, and other people then don't feel as bad to say anything. I can tell you after that comment by Eilish, I was like, okay, next time when there's a meeting that starts late, I'm going to say the same thing. I have school pickups tonight, so can we please start?
I think the important part also of what you're saying is like half of, or a big part of being heard is just having a voice, right? And being able to say sort of, I need this, or this should be done this way, and sort of the importance of having a voice. And I think, Andrée-Lise and Elaine, like you're known for having a voice because of where you are, and I think being pioneers as, sort of like female investors. Do you want to maybe share maybe an experience of maybe the first moment where you realized your voice was powerful? I'm sorry, that's an off-the-cuff question. Huh?
I love the question. I think the first time I was in this situation, it was at the beginning of my first fundraising, but I didn't feel I was powerful, but I feel I was accepted. And I think to be accepted and include, it's the beginning of the story generally. And at this time, I was in fundraising with one of the managing partner of Brookfield, Richard Legault, who's in charge of the energy for the big Brookfield. I had a conversation with him, tried to convince him to put $5 million in my first fund without track record, without realty. Big challenge. And he said, Andrée-Lise, I will support you, but be honest with me all the time. This story will take 10 years. You will go through valley, desert, I ask you just only one thing. Commit yourself to be very open and honest with me. And I said yes. But at this time, I say, if this man, very successful, part of the great house who's Brookfield, can support me with 5 million after a small due diligence based on confidence, I feel I can climb the Kilimanjaro tomorrow morning with a backpack enough. Because at this time, when someone gives you the possibility to win one thing, you know you can win many things, many times. And it's the beginning of real story. And many times in my life, when I have entrepreneur in front of me, specifically women entrepreneur, I try to be this Richard Legault for them, to give them the ticket. You are a VIP person in my life. I'm there to support, but be loyal. When things will be bad, say to me. When things will be good, will be your success. But I want to know. I want transparency. I want to have a relationship based on our values at Cycle Capital. Be respectful of my time, the time of our team, and just ask if you need something. And if we can help, we will do that for you. We're there to support you. And I think it's not about powerful. It's be part of the game. And with one ticket, you can climb the world. It's easy after.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Andrée-Lise. That's inspiring. Yeah. Elaine, do you want to share maybe a moment where you felt like your voice was heard, or you discovered your voice was heard? Or
my story is a little different. So Andrée-Lise spoke about raising your children properly. I was raised by two parents, but particularly as it relates to business, a father who saw that I was keen about a career. And my father has a grade 10 education. He's an entrepreneur that's been very successful. And so he didn't feel he could help me as far as education was concerned, but he opened up my world to other successful men. And I say men because that's all that were around him. And from the age of 10 or 12, whatever I told my dad I wanted to be when I grew up, he would make me meet with his lawyer, his accountant, his bank manager, and I met with these men at a very young age who were human and who were interested to talk to me. And I grew up believing that I could do whatever I wanted to do, but I also grew up that men weren't as scary as, unfortunately, and not even just men, but people of authority and power aren't as scary. They're just humans who happen to be, people who took time to chat with this, 12-year-old, 14-year-old girl. So I came out into the world really believing that I do have a voice and I do deserve to be at the table. And sometimes that served me well and sometimes it didn't. One of the things that I had to learn was once I realized that there was this gender disparity, to then trust myself. So I had an opposite shift where it was, I think I can do what I want. I think I have a voice. I think I have power. And then it was, oh, wait a minute. People aren't listening to me. I have to continue to trust myself and push through. And, that's what I seem to keep doing.
Yeah. Be perseverant. Yeah. Or persevere, I should say. Okay. So, I think we're nearing the end of, the time we have. I'd like to sort of conclude the discussion on I think a lot of this conversation was sort of hopeful and noted by sort of positive action or a move towards positive action. But like we've said it so many times, I think through this conversation, despite the huge strides that have been made in recent years as it relates to gender diversity or inclusiveness, women and people of diverse background are still underrepresented and underpaid and often discriminated against, particularly in the tech industry. And, moreover, the gender gap in financing that we were discussing, at the onset of this conversation, for women-led Canadian businesses is real. So maybe in like just a few, like 2-3 words, what is really the resounding best and fastest way for us to finally close this gap, Cindi-Eve? Don't want to put you on the spot.
I hope I have an 8 and an 11-year-old daughter, and I hope that, I try to tell them every day that they can do whatever they want. And I hope that when they're my age, that, we will no longer be having these discussions, or there will be no need to have those discussions, because the gap will be closed. I think it's basically the importance of everything we've discussed is being aware that there are some bias. It's being conscious that we need to make sure that women are represented and women are everywhere in all aspects of the society. It's us every day doing the conscious decision of hiring more women, hiring young women, giving the chance of young women who have families but who deliver and have ambitions, and it's making sure that they embrace that ambitions and that they're not afraid. So to me, it's one of those important factor. And it's think about the small poor entrepreneur in the developing countries trying to help her family and provide, to having the CEO at the table who has all the resources, and for her it's the importance of helping and empowering others. And to me, when I think of why it matters, I always think in my head about a story when I was in Saudi Arabia, and it was the Back to Business in September, and it was the Chamber of Commerce had this big events in what would be kind of like an arena in Canada, and there was 500 men there, and I was the only female in the entire audience, and people wondered who I was and wanted to come talk to me. And I made an amazing network that evening, and I was able to meet a lot of influential Saudi businessmen. And then at the end of the evening, I see my colleague from the Australian embassy. And he says, "Hey, how are you? How have you been?" He's like, "I can't believe you showed up here." And I was like, wow, this is coming from my colleagues at the Australian embassy. So you never know where the bias come from. And I was like, I'm a diplomat like you, and I have every right. And nobody has told me that I'm not supposed to be here. So I'm here, and I'm going to do my job like yours. So you never know where the bias comes from. And just be conscious of it. Also, just in closing, I think this whole COVID thing has brought extra work even on women, having the kids teleworking. And so it's, I would say, having the online classes and, doing all the meals at home and juggling the work and etc. So I think I will say kudos to everyone. And it's one of those things of sending you virtual hug in all your work and your ambition. And Andrée-Lise, you and I share something in common. I was born in Bécomo as well, and my family is still there. Yeah. So as I was reading for her, it's a really small town in Quebec where Brian Mulroney is from. And when I was reading about you, it brought a smile. I'm like, oh my God, it's such a small world, because we share that in common. So it's a pleasure to virtually meet you. And thank you so much for inviting myself and the Trade Commissioner Service and the Government of Canada to this panel today.
Thanks.
I don't know if I can add just one thing.
Yeah, of course.
We're more women who's managing money, and I hope before I will be die, we can change the expression "cash is king" for "cash is queen."
I like that.
It will be powerful.
I like that. Elaine, do you wanna add something?
I just think it's our responsibility as humans to listen, evolve, adapt. Recognize, because I may not have a racial or gender bias, but I have other unconscious biases, and we have to be open as humans. And then as women, we have to be brave and continue to persevere, because change doesn't happen easily. And so it's not for the faint of heart to crush through and try and break down barriers. So believe in yourself, confidence, and tenacity are some of the things that are necessary for success and survival.
Yeah. So thanks for that. I think, takeaways: self-awareness, education, having access to resources, and just, I guess, working hard, like pushing through. So I'd like to thank you, ladies, so much for sharing with us today. I think your insights are valuable to us all and in so many regards. I don't know if we have time for a few questions, Anna, or if our time's up.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you, ladies. Time is almost up. But what I would like to ask for you is to take a virtual screenshot, because we're not taking group pictures, but I'd like to invite you for a group screenshot for the four of you together to immortalize this moment. So I'm not going to add my camera, and I'll just let that screenshot happen. So thank you very, very much. So that's great. Thank you so much. So again, thank you, Melissa, Elaine, Andrée-Lise, and Cindi-Eve for these really impactful comments and insights. It was a very insightful conversation, and thank you for sharing so open-heartedly. I took some notes that I certainly look forward to reviewing, and I feel tremendously inspired. So thanks again for connecting with us today, and most importantly for the pioneer work that you do, the very important work that you do. Again, one of the hashtags for this event is collaborate to win. So it's really this idea of working together, and a lot of your comments spoke to me directly. So thanks again. As we move into the second part of our event and get ready to hear our dear Montreal founders shine on the global stage, let me tell you a little bit more about how we went about identifying these stellar entrepreneurs. So at the end of May, when we decided to get involved with WISE24, we reached out to several key players in the VC and startup ecosystems. They have handpicked and referred over 30 startups, which we then invited to apply. Our evaluation criteria include innovation, social and environmental impact, viability and market opportunity, as well as the founding team. The top startups were selected by our WISE24 Montreal jury and were presented to Women Startup Labs for their selection last week. Now, hear this. The team at Women Startup Lab was so impressed that they extended an invitation to all those that we recommended to present today on their global platform for WISE24. We could not be more thrilled. So who are they? What do they do? And most importantly, how are they innovating to change the world? We're about to find out, along with 1,500 other attendees watching, investors, other founders, as well as organizations such as ours that support entrepreneurs and women-led, women-owned businesses. So I will be moving on the global platform as our team at the Scotia Centre will be streaming this as well. So sit comfortably, kick back, and let's get ready to cheer for these amazing founders that will also be connecting with us right after their pitches. So stay tuned. We will be hearing from our jury, and we will be announcing also the jury's award. So please bear with me as we transition. I'm going to turn off my camera, and in about a minute, we'll get started on the global cast. Thank you.